So this game is like, it's kind of strange because there's like because it's basically just an adventure game where you just like kind of free roam and stuff and you just kind of take it in. So I looked at it and I thought it was such a unique game, I just had to play it. So, and it was free on Twitch Prime, so like I had to get it and try it. You do the commentary. I just need to like make the audio like halfway. Is there a way of making the resolution any? Bro, what? Let's make the field of view and the brightness needs to be for this game.
Hello everyone, I'm Dan Pinchbeck, I'm the creative director of The Chinese Room, and this is the Dear Esther.
All the, it's everything on high.
Developers commentary.
Hi, I'm Rob Briscoe, I'm the artist on Dear Esther.
And I'm Jessica Curry, and I was the composer on the game.
So what you're looking at today is a remake of a mod. Dear Esther started off.
So you'll see around you in a lot of the environments, there's a lot of detail ingrained into everything. One of the things that I wanted to do with Dear Esther is bring the visuals up to the same kind of level of detail that Dan and Jess had put into the other areas of the game. So all of the history and the kind of hidden pieces of story that are intertwined with the VOs and the music and stuff, I kind of wanted to bring some of that into the environments. So if you look around you, you'll see that there's a lot of interesting bits and pieces, a piece of paper with someone's name on it, a photograph, an ultrasound. All of these little bits and pieces are kind of laid in to just kind of bring another aspect of the story into the game. And also, they're actually randomized, so every time you play, you'll see something different lying around. And this is just to build on this idea that everybody has a unique experience and a unique interpretation of the story.
Part of the point about the whole
What do you mean yeet and
game, I think, was this idea that rather than having a linear, straight-through version of the story, that we could have multiple story units for each place you were, and I was really interested in this idea of how you can open up that space that people can interpret. So I loved the idea that you could have two people that had played this game and then would have a conversation about it, and one of them would say, oh, what did you think about when this happened? And the other person would be like, well, that didn't happen for me. I had a completely different event happen or a completely different story happen.
When I wrote the music for the mod of Dear Esther, there was absolutely no budget whatsoever.
I'm not playing with anyone.
For live.
It's like, it's got like a commentary over it. It kind of like makes it, kind of, like, it makes the game better.
So all the music was sampled. But one of the good things about that is it actually forced me to be quite creative about how I wrote the music. So with my background in sound art, I wanted to use samples in a different...
Everything about Esther for me is a dream. The landscape is not an island, it's the dream of an island. The music is like music that you wake up because you've heard in your sleep, but you're not conscious of hearing it. And the language and the story was supposed to be like that as well. It didn't matter the sense it made, it was more about the kind of the shapes it created, if that makes sense. So that the words would kind of were like this symbol on the beach, which is the golden ratio, is one of the only things that's really left explicitly from the mod. In the original mod, there was an awful lot of more kind of symbols and kind of a much more kind of mystical, sort of magical element to the island. There was a lot of very weird stuff in there. And a lot of them came out of the commercial version because they felt like they were a little bit explicit, and instead there's a lot more hidden kind of codes and symbols in there. There's still some stuff which you can only actually see or experience if you are not playing the game, if you're looking at it from editor. We had in the original mods things like trees planted to mirror the shape.
So something I wanted to do as an artist was create some kind of rewards for the player when they explore the island. There are some areas of the game where it's a little bit more quieter, there's no music or there's no voiceovers. So I kind of wanted to create a bit of an incentive for people to explore. And you'll find around the island that these kind of like random scattered items that are usually slightly out of place from the environment themselves. But in another aspect, they actually bring a little bit of story to the island itself, usually to the island or to the actual protagonists or you know, the characters that surround it. So you'll find it around the island, these little props and stuff. Just keep your eye out for it if you're exploring.
I guess I just go back the way I came. Because there was like a separate direction, so I guess, like, go that way. Oh my god, this bit is so annoying. You can't, like, it's in the ocean. Need to get out. This game may be boring to some people, but, like, it's just a different game. And I thought I wanted to try it out, so why not? It's free. Don't trigger the voiceover. Good. It would be a lot better though if it did utilise all of the screen. There's seriously no way to make it like... Oh, I'm so dumb. I'm so dumb. 16 to 9. What is my monitor? It's better. Yeah. I mean, it's just a chilled out game. Like, it's different to what I usually play. So, yeah. And look, graphics are good.
So people have asked why the Dear Esther is set on a Hebridean island. What's really interesting about this is it's one of those times when your kind of aspirations as an artist and the practical realities kind of dovetail. We knew that we had to have some way of limiting the player from disappearing off the play space, and when we made the original, it was a mod, and because it was a Half-Life 2 mod, you kind of had Eastern European city, spaceship, or blasted, desolate landscape, where you had 3 options if you didn't want to start making any other assets. So it started off with these practical constraints.
One of the things you're always trying to do as a composer is create memorable themes. And
jump off the edge.
A slight confession is that probably the most memorable theme, which is Remember in Dear Esther, wasn't actually created for the game. Rob's looking shocked! So it was actually from a piece of choral music that I'd written years before, based on a Christina Rossetti poem called Remember. And one of the things I was talking about earlier was how I didn't have any budget. So I had this piece of choral music, And I thought, hang on, this is absolutely perfect for Esther, but I don't want to use all of it. So the only bit that you actually get in the game is the first line of the choral piece of music. But that actually went on to form the main theme of the music that I wrote. And I think for me it's really interesting about how things that you've written earlier, years before, sometimes come in really, really useful and fit. So I always tell people and students not to despair if something doesn't get used or doesn't work at the time, because actually there'll come a place or in a time where you think, hang on a minute, I've got something that fits. So in terms of that memorable theme, the remember theme gets used in multitude of different ways.
Which way do I go, left or right?
And one of the things it does is helps you to identify the kind of psychic place that you're in the game. So the theme is played in lots of different ways, and actually you'll notice that as you go through the game, it becomes more and more broken and more manipulated and broken down as the player goes through the journey and as you're psychologically struggling to get to the end point in the game. So music's really, really useful for highlighting the psychological mood. And we talk a lot about psychogeography, which always sounds a bit...
What is it? I don't know.
Something that I wanted to bring through in the art of the game was the same kind of fidelity that you find in both Jessica's music and Dan's writing. In the same kind of way that you have all of these little details, these very close attentions to detail that kind of really bring richness to the story. And something that was missing in the original mod version was just this lack of a visual layer of story. And something that I did throughout the art of the game is to add in all these little details here and there, little bits of story, little links to certain things that you may or may not hear or see, just a layer of richness in the world and give you some kind of reward for exploring. So keep your eye out as you look around.
I want to see what that ship is. But those caves look cool. It's starting to get a bit interesting now. Because we got a ship over there, lighthouse there, and some caves here. I want to avoid that. Probably should have turned off commentary. Oh, what are these markings on the wall? This game did come out a couple of years ago, so my graphics card, if there was graphics settings, my graphics card will be able to max it out. Because my graphics card is came out in 20... when did 1060 come out? 2016 probably. I'll go now. That's all. Yeah. But I guess it's pretty realistic. Because torches in real life usually unless it's a really good torch, it doesn't really do that. It's doing some swimming. Alright. Bruh. From here. I'm trying to, but because that cave's a dead end.
I think the central question to the entire experience, for most people that have played it or are talking about it, is this idea of, is the island real? Is what's going on a literal event of a man walking across a Scottish island or is it a dream that he's had? Does the island even exist? And one of the things that we try to do with the writing is to constantly lull the player into a position where they got an understanding, they made a decision about what they thought was going on, and then to undercut it. So you never actually were able to settle on any one interpretation. And that was the challenge I set myself when I wrote the original models. Can we put a story in a game that not only lends itself to multiple interpretations, but there is no stable interpretation. Every single interpretation you have will always have questions, and you'll never be able to fully trust what you think you understand about the game. It's challenging, I think, for that result. It becomes quite a challenging kind of game story because of that, because you don't ever get that situation to go, I understand it now, I can walk away from this thing and it's all closed off and it's tidy. It was a very deliberate attempt to say, no matter where you think you are with this story, you're always questioning whether or not that's right.
Yes. No. Come on. Just jump up a bit. Please, just jump up. Yes. Damn. We got up. I love how game creators went from this to Fortnite, and like, bruh, have I been here? I'm not sure.
There's a scene in Donnie Darko where Drew Barrymore's playing his English teacher, and she talks about Celador as being the most beautiful word in the English language, and about it's the sound of the words together. And Dear Esther actually comes from the introduction to From Your Faith No More song, the Crab song on the first album, Introduce Yourself. And there's a point where, I think it's Chuck at that point, as the vocalist before Mike Patton, just says, Dear Esther. And it really lodged with me, because the sound Dear Esther just has a really amazing sound to it. And I think when we started making it, and the idea of it being these series of letters to someone came through, it just came straight back out of...
Something that I wanted to bring through in the art of the game was the same kind of fidelity that you find in both Jessica's music and Dan's writing, in the same kind of way that you have all of these little details, these very close attentions to detail that kind of really bring richness to the story. And something that was missing in the original mod version was just this lack of a visual layer.
This and GTA came out around the same time, I'm pretty sure.
Something that I did throughout the art of the game is to add in all these little details here and there, little bits of story, little links to certain things that you may or may not hear or see, just a layer of richness in the world, and give you some kind of reward for exploring.
I've been here.
So keep your eye out as you look around.
There is, it is an adventure game, so you really have to explore. Like, you have to give it some time. Alright, bye. See you another time, I guess. But like, you have to like give it time with this game. Make sure you explore every inch of it. Because there was like a left turn like right at the start, which I could have gone to, but I chose not to. Which would have took me up there. But yeah. Oh, I can zoom in, nice. Go and trigger it. Who's the second viewer? Commit suicide. Right. Do you actually see that lighthouse? Should probably explore that a bit. Oh yeah, now I'll be able to head back up there. Look, I probably didn't explore all this properly, so I just spawned right at the start. Right. Do we have a proper look around? All those markings. Looks like spunk. Some sailor's spunk or something, I don't know. Oh, I really didn't... Oh, for fuck's sake.
So you'll see around you in a lot of the environments, there's a lot of detail ingrained into everything. One of the things that I wanted to do with Dear Esther is bring the visuals up to the same kind of level of detail that Dan and Jess had put into the other areas of the game. So all of the history and the kind of pieces of story that intertwined with the videos and the music and stuff, I kind of wanted to bring some of that into the environments. So if you look around you, you see that there's a lot of interesting bits and pieces, a piece of paper with someone's name on it, a photograph, an ultrasound. All of these little bits and pieces are kind of laid in to just kind of bring another aspect of the story into the game. And also, they're actually randomized, so every time you play, you'll see something different lying around. And this is just to build on this idea that everybody has a unique experience and a unique interpretation of the story.
Oh, what's in here? Get your flashlight out. Where's the flashlight? Can you get the flashlight out? That would be like... Okay. Dead end. Could like hop over a rock, but... Okay. Does my flashlight like run out of battery or something? Anyway. Onwards this way. Wait, what? Where do I go? Literally like... What? How do I get up there? I have no clue. Right. I guess you are supposed to go this way. I don't know what I missed though back there.
So people have asked why the Dear Esther's set on a Hebridean island. What's really interesting about this is one of those times when your kind of aspirations as an artist and the practical realities kind of dovetail. We knew that we had to have some way of limiting the player from disappearing off the play space, and when we made the original, it was a mod, and because it was a Half-Life 2 mod, you kind of had Eastern European city, spaceship, or blasted desolate landscape. You had three options if you didn't want to start making any other assets. So it started off with these practical constraints. We don't want to set it on a spaceship, we don't want to set it in an Eastern European city, so it's got to be on this kind of like this desolate landscape. And we want to limit the player, so an island seems like a natural choice. And it's really interesting how you start from that, and we had this big lump of clay on a table that we were carving out paths and things to annoying the cleaners and things like that. And Jess and I were talking, and Jess started making sort of snippets of music to kind of go in there. And then all of a sudden we just went, oh, that's the story. Oh, that's what happened here. But it really started, I think, from the place. And when we started looking at photographs of Bore, we started going and reading some of the history behind it. Suddenly that was it. And it just was really, really naturally became, this is the place, this is what happened here, this is how it feels. And then everything else kind of coalesced around that.
Yeah, I think as an artist it made my job a lot easier, because those islands are so kind of like, the environment is kind of hostile. You're out there in the Hebrides, you've got this kind of like inclement weather, you've got cold, rain, snow. It's a very kind of, it can be a very depressing place to be at times, but it's also at the same time very beautiful, and it's this kind of like stark, bare landscape, but that has this beautiful surroundings. So it's, in terms of art, I think it really helped me to portray a lot of the themes in Dear Esther.
And there was a natural fit with the music as well. It suggested a musical style, which was really key, I think.
Wonder what I missed. What is this way? Ah. Don't think I've been here.
So there's a lot of places in the game where you see a lot of strange things, and this is very deliberate. One of the things we wanted to do is just kind of like not spoon feed the player every little piece of story. We kind of just, some things are literally just in there to just kind of let you think and let you decide on whatever you want to bring to the story yourself.
That's actually pretty cool.
So
just leave it in there.
It's kind of like I approached it like an impressionist painting, where you've got like this kind of very vague outline of things, but if you stare at it enough, you can kind of like fill in the spaces, and kind of the image comes together on its own. So a lot of these kind of strange pieces of geography and stuff, that's really kind of deliberate in some ways, just to kind of keep the player's mind open and kind of bring their own interpretations of the story through that.
No, we can't. There's no way out. Loading. Yes! We got to the next bit. So that's where we were. And we're going down here.
When I was originally thinking about how to write the music for the game, I suddenly realised that you don't see anybody in the game, and the most important character as such is the island itself. So one of the things that I did with the music was to write the island as if she or he were a character in its own right.
If this is a real place, I need
that's
to
really important, I think, that you're going through this space and actually it's completely devoid of people, but the music in a way populates the island, and that the voice
also,
of the island speaks to you through the music.
Which is interesting, because I think that's really come on in terms of later games we've done, that sowed the seeds for the way in which we approach music in Rapture, where it was very specifically the voice of characters. A Machine for Pigs as well, where the music was about being Lily's voice in the game, Lily's representation in the game. So it's interesting how, looking back on Esther, a lot of those kind of ideas were tried out here that then came on to take up.
So something you'll notice as you look around the environment is, you know, from a distance you see the landscape. It's kind of a beautiful place in some ways, but something I wanted to bring to the game was that there's this second layer beneath the surface. Whereas if you look at things closely, you see that the actual island itself is very polluted. It's kind of very rotten. You know, everywhere you look, every rock, every grass surface, it has this layer of filth on it, and it's kind of been put in there just to kind of emphasize further that this island's a really unpleasant place to live. It's like if you scratch the surface, you see like just how corrupt this island is.
I thought it was just like an abandoned island. I didn't think it was actually like a place people like lived. Like somewhere you just go and like go in your boat on your own, or with someone else, other person, and then just like camp, I guess. I don't know. Just like chill out. You don't really do anything. You just like walk around. What the fuck is that? That's... What would this be? So they look like hands, and then like, not sure what that is. It's just like, probably like a child trying to like make something in the sand. Right, so I'm guessing like we're supposed to like go up there or go up there. I have no idea. Maybe up here, because that takes us to like another shipwreck. I'm not sure if we can actually get on that ship. Would be cool, but no. What is that? Oh, it's just like one of those sea things. This looks like Mount Chiliad. Also, let me quickly check that I'm streaming it. Yeah, I am. Cool. Streaming at 1080p, 60 FPS. Oh, it's a house. That's nice. I want to explore the house. This looks like some kind of maze. Maybe there was like walls here before. Like a garden, yeah. Don't activate. What the fuck? What the... What? I just got messaged. Probably from him? No. Wait, it created a new account. What? I don't know. Oh. Alright. Yeah, what the fuck? What the fuck is that? What the actual frick? Oh, no, alright. Alright, this was probably a torture chamber. Because I have no idea. Oh, maybe it was just like a a doctor's surgery, you know? But what kind of medicine would they... Can we walk over these walls? Oh god.
Oh.
Come on. Damn it. Have to go around. This would be much better in real life because you could actually jump over the walls and run and stuff. Right, yeah, I'm kind of playing like an adventure game on stream, so like, yeah. It's pretty peaceful to be honest. Oh.
Bruh.
Okay.
Bruh.
Don't ruin the peacefulness.
Número 2. Pues no hay pedo. ¿Oyeron con qué es lo que se ve? Bruh.
So in this game there was like these bloody scissors and some kind of like heart or something. And also like a bloody syringe. Kind of creepy. Did you actually there?
You, Griffin, why are you talking?
Oh, God. Right, what is in this house? Oh, is there some guy sleeping in there? Well, this dude was probably pretty fucked up because he has like syringes and stuff in his other place. So that's his house. And then in here it's like a garage or something. I have no clue. If it's another like... What's that? They will notice, alright. Damn, this game is only 1 gigabyte and it's so freaking detailed. What the heck is that? Oh, getting windy. It's getting quite windy. Let's go this way. You know what, I'm gonna like take some screenshots and stuff. What is up there? Is that a cave? Can't tell. There's something down there. So...
So one of the things that influenced the visuals quite a lot was the tech limitations at the time, and also the kind of themes of the game. Like tech-wise, we were never ever gonna kind of achieve photorealism, and I think that was a good thing. I mean, really, it made us sort of stretch out into other areas, and for me as an artist, it kind of made me think a little bit more creatively. I did a few...
We should probably talk about some of the inspirations behind it. I'm on a strict you don't talk about Stalker kind of thing going on here. But when Rob and I started talking, I think one of the first things that we kind of discovered was how much we're both obsessed with Stalker.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the major things behind it in terms of when people talk about game inspirations. I mean, for me, there's a lot of FPS stuff in there, Doom, System Shock, but I think Stalker probably more than anything else. And Roadside Picnic, the Strugatsky novel that Stalker's based on, of the idea of this incredible space that you didn't understand, that's simultaneously beautiful and threatening, And I think sort of Tarkovsky's kind of films kind of play into that as well. You know, this version of Stalker, that you want to have this place that you feel rather than think about. And for me, that was like really kind of core to all of the inspirations for the game. Was this is a space that is about feeling, not thinking.
Yeah, I think the movies in particular. I think I hadn't watched the movies. I'd read the book and I played the game. But when I watched the movie, it kind of all made sense to me, like why I like the game so much and why I like the story. It's just like every shot is like a painting. It's like every shot has its story to tell. There's very little dialogue in the actual movie itself. There's just these non-lingering shots, and each shot is.
This is a shipwreck.
One of the more interesting and challenging things to do in the visual side of things is to create an emotional connection with the player.
So Jesus
with the music,
was a very
it's
man,
very strong,
so
and the dialogue can kind of help you to feel what the character's feeling, but to kind of really create an atmosphere and create emotion, it's very difficult. So I designed a few things very subtly within the environment to kind of plant imagery into your mind and kind of make you feel certain things. With this shipwreck on the beach, you can kind of, like, if you look at it from certain angles, you get this real, like, it's like a cross sticking up. It's this kind of semi-religious imagery. But it really kind of, it's not obvious, it's not in your face, it's just kind of like something that makes you feel like something you know. And so like there's a lot of deliberate attempts in the game to recreate that feeling, and it's kind of hard to point out in many other places, but it's done in a way where every single rock, every single plant, every single cliff face has been deliberately placed and designed in a way to try and make you feel something in the game.
We got sucked into a hole. Are we gonna respawn in the same? Oh, it's a new place. Nice. Can we get a hype in the chat? Where is this? Okay. We fell asleep and we woke up. Whoa. To be back, I probably don't want to go here in real life because I don't want to fall down the hole and then just like not know where I am. Whoa! This is some satanic shit right here. This is like a cool hangout place. By the way, where is that light coming from? It's pretty cool. There. It's got to be one of the most scenic games. If only it was max res. I'm gonna quickly search up what aspect ratio is 1080. 21:9. So why is that not? Oh wait, doesn't go up all the way. Oh. What? 8x. Wait for resync. Apply. Wait, what? Okay, that was not what I meant to do. Media. Advanced. 4x. Apply. Wait, what? Why did that have anything to... Wait, what the fuck? Why am I flying?
The caves in the game are really interesting.
No, why am I flying?
It's a very
I don't want to fly.
tonal shift.
Please stop making me fly. What? Wait, no. Zoom in. Zoom in. What did I just do? What did I just do? No, I just broke it somehow. How did I break the game? Sorry, how did I break it?
Within the whole visual look of the game, it's kind of like this more organic, more surreal, dreamlike landscape compared to what you used to before this point. It's you know, we kind of used the visuals and this kind of unreal theme very subtly, but here it's kind of at the forefront.
Alright, cool. Videos. Right. Apply. Don't know what I did.
Right. And it's,
to
me, it's kind of been designed as this kind of journey through the inner self, through the body, and it's really designed to be a very different experience compared to the rest of the game.
Right, I need to stop what I'm doing.
This for me is probably the most pivotal music cue in the game, and it's the one that most people write to me about to say that they are absolutely obsessed with and they love. It's the only music cue that has singing, it has a female voice, and I think that's a really important shift for me, that you've gone from this beautiful string music, but it's quite abstract, into what is effectively a song, and with lyrics, so you're actually explicitly saying something as a composer at this point. The other thing that I think it's important to say for me is it's the biggest shift from the music that I wrote for the mod. It's the same music, but the act of having it sung by an amazing singer. I sang it on the original and it's really bad, and Clara Sanabras re-recorded it.
I just want to say that I think you can divide caves and games into pre and post Dear Esther. I think that it's just a way of breaking away from reality into saying what you can do with these spaces that makes incredibly much more vividly colourful and much more kind of interpretive and look for it. And it's really interesting that I look at caves now in games and I find myself going, that's a very Rob Briscoe cave. And I think that's an amazing thing to have achieved. So I think it's one of those, it's great paying other people's work compliments. I enjoy that because you never feel like you're being big-headed about yourself, but I think it is, I think particularly it does come again down to that blend between the audio and visuals that just, it's a real high watermark. I kind of, it's one of the areas in all the games we've made that I'm most proud of.
I think as well, you think you know what you're getting with Dear Esther for the first 45 minutes of the game, wherever we are at this point, and then you step into something completely unexpected and completely new, and I think it just throws the player such a curveball in such a wonderful way. Esther was my first foray into writing music for games.
Thinking someone knocked
and I actually approached it very traditionally. So more as a film score than a traditional interactive game music score.
Magic mushroom.
And what's really interesting for me is that the lack of interactivity in the music was never a problem for anybody that played the game. And that's a separate discussion, but there's a big schism between game music composers of how much the music should be following the player at all times in terms of interactive music. But one of the reasons I wanted to...
I don't know when the paper origami boats first came into things with Esther, really, but it felt like a really amazing metaphor of taking these letters and folding them into boats and then letting them leave the island, because you know at this point in the game is kind of the realisation is there that this isn't going to end well, and that the narrator is never leaving the island, and the idea that this kind of, again, the idea of communication, or the attempt or failure of communication, or trying to speak through the code, or whatever it is, having to interpret it. But the idea of putting the boat in the underground river really felt like it kind of reinforced that sort of dream-like kind of quality of the caves, of actually there's something really sad about this one boat, because when you see it go past, you know that even the boats aren't going to leave the island. Like this is something which doesn't have a tidy, neat kind of like resolution, and there's, even if you don't sort of think about it to that sort of level of depth, there's just something, it's one of those things that I really love about games that you can do, where it's just a moment that has a really distinct emotional tone to it, that you go, there's a pause when you see that boat goes past, that I just think is, yeah, it's something special you can do with kind of media like games.
If I can. Looks cool.
The sound here is a classic case of, again, what music I think does really well, which is you've had this soft, lyrical, beautiful, epic, dreamlike music, and then the moment you come out of the caves, you're into this really harsh soundscape, and the tonal shift is very, very brutal, I think, and deliberately so. You have very little music when you come out of the caves, you hear the wind, and it's a classic case of foreshadowing, so we know from this point that things are probably going to get bleaker, more difficult, and yeah, it's something that music does really well, I think, which is that emotional signalling and signposting.
I don't see this game becoming a difficult game. There we go. No, this is an adventure game. What do you mean difficult? Please don't say there's a sad ending, because like... What the fuck? Damascus, I can read that, and like say... Behold Damascus taken. What?
This whole area moved, didn't it? The original mod was a cave, right?
Well, this is my motherboard. This looks like a
back end of the
motherboard.
level, and we had this long.
I may as well turn on my like face cam. It's like it's not going to be interrupting the game.
Kind of, it's the point of high madness, I think, in the game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of just where you feel like you're losing the plot completely, both like visually and auditory, and you know. It's kind of like this really
what does it mean Damascus is taken?
I think it's where you feel most that you're underneath the mountain, and you feel the weight of that mountain.
Wait,
and
we're
just
literally underneath.
I loved the idea when we were, putting through it of what would it actually take to do this, like to actually paint all these symbols and what is going on. And it really, it's quite an explicit kind of thing of madness of going, you would have to be insane or very, very disturbed to actually do this, and what is the process that this person's trying to work through, what they trying to achieve by this. And I think it really strengthened it, making it a crawl through a tunnel as opposed to just a static location.
Yeah, I think it's the consistency and the coherence of the symbols is a lot more broken down as well. Like you see some symbols before like scattered around the environments, but at this point they're like
turning off face cam.
Right in your face, and they're kind of just, it's just total madness, any kind of meanings have been crossed over and confused, and I think it really helps to bring the tension up at this point in the level as well. So you're kind of coming out of this dreamlike state a little bit.
Yeah, you kind of know that you're getting towards the end of the serenity into something that's a bit more disturbed than that.
Yeah.
We eating? Looks like we're eating. Yeet. Down we go. How do we go down from here? Like what? What the freak? No, what? What the actual?
The motorway scene. The biggest new addition to between the mod and the commercial version. This didn't exist in the mod at all. It was a completely new thing.
Yeah, it's well, I wasn't sure where the idea spawned from to have this scene, whether I just sort of went off or we discussed it, or I can't remember. You know,
Can you remember? It just kind of appeared, didn't it? And then
it was just this kind of. I think for me, actually, I remember being some technical difficulty between the drop and then coming out at the end part, but it was like it was the same thing that we dealt with in the past of like, how do we not kill the player? From a technical standpoint, I think it might have been something to do that, but it was also, you know, I can't remember where the whole thing came from.
I think it's my favourite point in the whole game, actually. I think it's just it's quite shocking, and it's so surreal, and it's so beautiful, and from
it is surreal.
Point of view, you
just
have
like,
that baby's heartbeat bringing us back to the idea of the ultrasound. Was Esther pregnant? And it's one of those moments that I think everything just kind of collates together, and it's so unexpected.
Esther
for me it's like a moment of realisation.
Yes.
I just no-clipped at the frick.
It's coming to terms with something almost, you know.
Whether or not what actually is going on at the moment is real, this did happen. There's kind of an absolute. I remember playtesting it, and I didn't know that the car can get switched out with a hospital gurney, and I must have played it. I was like 3 or 4 times into playtesting it, and the first time it switched out and it was a gurney, and I really remember kind of sitting there and going, "Oh God, that's just," and really being just stopped in my tracks by it. And it's one of those weird things you get when you're making a game, that you know you'll never have those moments that a player does, where you know it all so well. It's really, really rare to be in a situation where you actually get a genuine, fresh player's eye view on what you're making.
Yeah, I was always a bit worried that it was maybe a bit too literal. Like we gone a bit too literal with that. But I think looking back at it now, there's still a lot of strangeness going on there. Obviously, the whole scene is unusual, but there's still these like very subtle details that are there that kind of still making you think, what does that mean? Like I think if you look closely, there's like coins scattered around and things like that. It's
and for me it's coins. Again, sorry to keep going on about it, but it's about layers of subconscious for me, that you start overground, you go into the caves, you go deeper, you're falling down, it's going down the rabbit hole effectively, and then you go to the deepest level, and that's actually the truth, that's the reality, that's what happened.
I don't really understand.
So the admission really is that I did play fast and loose with the geography of the M5. There isn't actually a welcome break service. It's just outside the junction of Sanford. But we also know.
Wait, this is the UK.
What a thing if you make something that's based vaguely on somewhere in real life. In terms of a compliment, when you're getting emails from players going, there isn't a welcome break there, and people really trying to work out where is this, and whole threads about where on the M5 it is. That's just the most amazing feeling. But I think what I really love what I think works really, really well in Esther, and again it's something that I think is really carried forward to our other games, is that a lot of the time we're not dealing with kind of like big, glamorous, amazing, epic places. It's a sort of like a ratty little island in the Hebrides. It's someone who lived in Wolverhampton. It's just outside, a service station on a stretch of the M5. And I think that earths what's going on. It gives it a realness as well, particularly when you sort of put it against the surreal
I want to actually like go to the M5. Alright, what's the M5? Map. Imagine if it's just here. That'd be funny. Alright. Is it just right here? Maybe just like, bro. Yeah, could be. No. I don't know.
This is caves. Actually, kind of going, this is really surreal and this is really, really dreamlike. But actually, I'm talking about, you know, a car accident just outside a little chef, and it kind of that playing off those two things against each other.
It's like making the ordinary extraordinary.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, but why is it all like... Oh, I have no clue what this game is about, dude. What the fuck just happened? I looked away for 1 second, and now I'm... What?
This scene for me is like really, really iconic because it kind of brings this idea of the caves being an inward journey through the body together. It's really kind of like a symbol of rebirth, and it actually brings together a lot of the visual goals that I wanted to achieve with a lot of the symbolism in the game. Like I've talked a little bit about how the environment was kind of designed to provoke emotions and kind of the impressionistic style gives you just enough information to make you think of things and feel things. But this is probably like the antithesis of this, and the whole feeling of rebirth here is quite strong. I know Jess.
Rebirth.
Yeah, the music's really supporting that.
Yeah.
Because we've gone, she sings always, always throughout, you know, we've got always, always, and then she sings never, in a moment of absolute soaring. It's the climax of the music.
As you come out of the water, the music kind of swells and you just kind of, it is like a moment of change has happened in some way, and
it's rebirth, isn't it? For me, it's his moment of clarity and acceptance and understanding of the reality of what's happened.
And you're literally moving towards the light at the end of the tunnel. You're actually doing that as you go through.
But the music, especially, I think before the music got layered in, that scene was nowhere near as kind of powerful for me. Like that kind of just totally made it.
Is this it? Oh, what? Alright. What the frick? Okay. Oh, let there be light.
Dan and I worked on lots of projects together, non-game projects, before we made Dear Esther. And I think the thing that links all of the projects that we've worked on together is that idea of hidden stories and layers of stories. And one of the things I wanted to do with the music was to embed hidden little hints and stories into it. So the music that you hear here has Morse code, and the Morse code is spelling out the word Esther. And I really liked this concept of that some people would understand that it was Morse code and try and figure out what it was saying.
It's probably the level which has changed most from the original mod. I think it's much bigger than the final level in the mod. And one of the major changes in there is in the original mod, the whole side of the cliff face was covered in painting and writing, and a lot of that moved inside to that corridor in the caves where it's really obsessionally painted on. And it was really, we spent so long on that because we were trying to get it looking right. Because it's one of those really interesting examples where I loved the image and the idea that you've got this guy painting the entire side of a mountain with words and symbols and things. But it was really interesting when it went into the rebuild. it just never worked. And I think it was because the environment was so crude in the mod that those symbols and that painting became the focus of the level, and it changed the feeling of the level completely, when actually that just wasn't something we could realise in any way, that not even technically, but just didn't artistically look and feel right. And I think probably sort of retrospectively looking back on it, that's about the sort of the sophistication and the subtlety that then came into the art, rather than just being, this is literally just a canvas that we write words on, to actually the environment telling its own story without the story being literally painted on it.
Yeah, it was very difficult when we were experimenting with that to kind of like...
I think one of the most fascinating things for me about planning this director's commentary has been that in previous years, when all the three of us have talked about Dear Esther, we've talked about the interpretation of the player, but actually going through this together, post having made it, we're still surprising each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really interesting for me, because it shows that we left interpretation for each other, and that we trusted each other actually just to get on with it. And because we each brought our own special and unique contribution to the game, we didn't have to, in a way, talk it to death, or say you have to justify every idea you have, or talk it to death, or explain it. That Rob's idea that the island is very tainted and corrupt, and my idea that Dan didn't know that the whole level of the caves is a birth metaphor.
One of the really nice things about the move from mod to the commercial version is that we had a couple of years worth of the community talking about the game before we went back into it again. And one of the things that I read on a forum was that someone had constructed this amazing version of the story where they'd decided that the narrator was Paul. And I hadn't thought of that. It was never part of the original writing. And I thought, that's so amazing that as a writer, your audience can find something in what you're doing that you hadn't thought of. So it was really important when we went back in to record the additional set of voiceovers. I thought, I absolutely want to do this. I want to take this idea that's come out of the fans and to run with this and to add an entire new sort of stream of story in there. So we added in a couple of cues within the fourth level that intimated much more strong.
What's fascinating to me, Dan, is that you're an atheist, but each of the three games that we've made are so strongly about religion, either the language or taking allegories and stories. Why are you so drawn to it?
I think I'm really interested in people
from
and
heaven.
The stories
Like
that make
heaven,
up people.
something like that.
And I think there is like in the Bible, like most kind of religious texts, it's not about what it is, it's about what is behind what it is, and that's what you're really getting to, is the idea of the sort of the parable or the metaphor. And it really felt like, particularly with Paul on the road to Damascus, is a story that many, many, many people know and we can understand, and it's about redemption and consequence and guilt and transformation, and who you really are and what that means. Is Dear Esther a depressing game or a hopeful game?
For me, it's kind of like a mix of both, really. I think, like,
Yeah,
my
same
interpretation is
probably.
kind of like, always feel like kind of depressed when I think about the kind of turmoil that this guy's been going through for God knows how long, and the kind of environment he's been in.
It's not depressing.
You know, all these events surrounding his story, but for
peaceful.
me, I always feel like a little bit hopeful at the end. You know, like the conclusion just feels
On a
like a
certain
relief, and like this is kind of
light
all
from
ended
heaven
in some way.
shone around him.
What do you think, Jess?
I think it's a game about acceptance, and I really like that. And
It's
I think
eggs.
it's telling that a lot of
Easter
people with
eggs.
mental health issues have responded really positively to the game, and we get a lot of emails and letters from those people saying that it's helped them through a really difficult time.
That's nice.
And
I mean,
for me, that's because it's about the struggle of being human, that it's hard and that we
It's
love
one of the
and
most
that we grieve
original
and we
games I've
lose,
ever played.
but we come through it, and those things are what makes us human, that it's transformative and that the pain is part of life, and that's a really beautiful message, and I think that's what you...
So Dear Esther is the first walking simulator. How do you feel about Walking Simulator?
You know what, I think I took offence to it when it first became a thing, but
it is.
no, I think
and
actually I
there's
don't
nothing
mind
wrong
it so
with
much
that.
now. I think the fact that
Especially in lockdown, this is like a virtual holiday
like
or something.
That genre has been kind of made our own by not just our game, but like a bunch of different games that kind of embraced it. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I'm still really confused about the need to categorise in games, probably more than any other creative industry, and I think it shows that games have a long way to come in terms of how we describe an experience. So I do agree with Rob that it's really positive that we retain Walking Simulator, but I still find it reductive, possibly, as a term. What about you, Dan?
I think for me, it's people want to know what they're buying and what they're getting into, and I think it's so people understand what a walking simulator. The last level ended up being quite a lot bigger.
Southwest. Western Superman, I know where that is. Look, I know. Fuck. Alright, yeah, I know where that is. Look, so where we got the M5, Western Superman. That's just, then we just do like a welcome break. Oh yeah. Welcome break. There we go. Has to be here. It has to be. Yeah, it's. I reckon it's this place. I reckon it's like. I reckon it's. Yeah, it's this place. I'm pretty certain this was the sign I saw earlier. That would be cool if it is here. There's like a Starbucks. It's like... I wonder like... I wonder if I search for Dear Esther. No. Where is Dear Esther set? No, it's not. Oh, okay. So that's where it was set. But like, I was wondering like where the car accident actually was.
Original mod, and it's also the one where actually the movement around it is in a way the most artificial. There's the big zigzagging cliff path that basically it's like a series of straight lines from point to point. There isn't a lot of movement, and one of the things that was really difficult to do with that was to not make it feel too much like a corridor and to give it that sort of sense of space and that you were actually exploring somewhere quite natural. I think, Rob, there was stuff which you put in there, like little new beat moments, like the ruins at the edge of the cliff, that just helped the player feel like they were on a journey rather than being pushed through a pipe.
Yeah, it was kind of just giving the player the reward for continuing on, and it, kind of still giving them some aspect of exploration and things to discover.
What was the person anyway?
I mean, the journey in this one is mostly vertical. But in the spaces where you are going horizontally, there's at least in the original mod, there wasn't a lot to see or do. So I just tried like layering in some very subtle things that didn't necessarily add. One of the things that I think was added more frequently in the final version of Dear Esther was the inclusion of a number of ghosts in the game.
These are not ghost.
Like ghosts that you'd see in a normal horror game. They're just very loose silhouettes that you'll see around the island, usually like quite a distance off, or just kind of somewhere that you barely see it out the corner of your eye. I think this is a good example of where it's kind of really in your face, and these are kind of just something that we put in to kind of not just bring some unreal elements to the island, but something supernatural as well, something that's kind of beyond this world, something kind of unsettling. And yeah, we've a lot of effort's been put in to make these things very subtle. I didn't really want them to be like, I didn't want it to be a ghost story, so to speak, but I just kind of wanted to bring some of this supernatural element into the game, and this area is probably one of the most prominent because you can see it just before you go down into the gully here, and I think it's really
the overlook. The point about this to me is that it's probably the voiceover in the game that kind of sums up the whole story and the experience. It's almost like a recap of everything that's gone before you start the final climb. And you know it's that pause before you're going to start the final climb, and before the game's
on this journey
kind of builds to a climax. But you can also see the whole level, and it's like the idea that you are standing looking down on your own journey, a bit like the idea of your life flashing before your eyes, or sort of like seeing your body but having an out-of-body experience at the moment of death. And it was really designed to try and get that feeling as the player that you stop and you take stock of everything, and there's a bit of a sense of there's no going back. You take a breath and now it finishes, and I really wanted to kind of achieve that sort of sense, and I think we did. I think it really came together here, that you've got that sense of going.
So here it kind of the environment becomes a little bit more surreal again.
Why is it all changing?
Play with the colours a little bit, bring up the saturation. It's kind of a little bit of a return to some of the more cave-like aesthetics in terms of colours and stuff like that. And it's kind of there to kind of signpost another significant moment in the game, or something that's leading up to the significant moment. It goes back to this kind of idea of having these emotional signposts in the visuals of the game, without it being overly obvious, and some of that emotional stuff comes through just...
The music that's playing here is a repeat of another cue, and originally we hear it played on the piano, and the string quartet take on the piece here. And it's one of those really nice instances where we were in the studio and I had this idea of how it was going to sound, and I thought it was going to be quite full and rich and, yeah, full-bodied. And then one of the string players said to me, this is wrong, actually, for what we're playing. And they said, let's strip out all the vibrato, let's play it in a really Scottish, plain style. And it absolutely transformed that piece, and it's one of the really special things about being a composer, is that you get to collaborate with people who come fresh to it. So you have this preconceived idea of how it should be, and then they say, no, why don't we turn it around and think about it like this? And it absolutely fits and works for that scene, because what we're getting at this point is a sense of fragility, of an ending, and it's almost reminiscent of a funeral procession. It's slow and it's dirge-like. But yeah, it was just a lovely moment where they gave something of themselves, and that's what's amazing about working with live instrumentalists. You're never going to get that from a sample.
It was possible that this last section of the game could have felt quite laborious and forced, because it's two long zigzagging paths that just go up, and there was a real importance to getting it right. Quite a lot of work went into it. I think at this point for me, you probably as a player understand that the narrator's going to die at the end, and that this is it. And unlike where the rest of the island has this sense of this can just keep going on forever and ever and ever, and you're going to keep the motif of come.
With the climb being quite a poignant moment of the game overall and of the story, it was quite a difficult task to try and make that climb still interesting and not too laborious, because it's kind of this zigzag up there with nothing really. There's no real environment. You just kind of have the sea on one side and the cliff face on the other. So there was quite a lot of work that went into kind of building up this feeling of tension as you're rising, and kind of making this moment as poignant as possible while still making it interesting. So a lot of effort was put into building up this weather.
What?
The winds and the swaying of the grass, and kind of the volume of the soundscapes, and everything mixing together with the music, and just kind of visually really trying to make this a tense moment, and I think it's hopefully been pulled off all right. You'll notice when you get to the top, this kind of tension dies, and that's very purposeful. You'll see no more wind. It's just kind of like a symbolic thing where you're coming to the last moment, the point of no return, and that's been very deliberately designed that way.
We had a lot of debates, didn't we, about the ending of the game and whether the player should retain control or whether it was okay to go to a cutscene at this point. I personally don't mind it. I actually actively like it because I think it works really well as a metaphor for loss of control at that point. Dan, I know you're not as keen.
Yeah, I'm not. I would have loved the player not to have had control taken away from them, but to me it was a balance between two evils. The evil of having a cutscene and the evil of the player accidentally falling off the ladder halfway up and destroying the ending.
Yeah, I agree. I think we tried a few different things, and the tech at the time just wasn't, the ladder tech at the time just wasn't there, so and the other thing for me was pacing. It was making sure all the music, the voiceovers, the timings and everything were perfect for that final jump off point, and just letting the players kind of noodle around going up a ladder for what may have been like 7 minutes because it's a tall tower was kind of an impossible task.
One of the things that I enjoyed the most on working on Dear Esther was Rob's beautiful visuals were so inspiring, but Dan's words are always so amazing to write to. I think that's where we start as a partnership. And the music at the end was so easy to write because that last voiceover is the pinnacle of the writing to me, as it should be, because it's the last VO, so you would have failed if it wasn't good, but it is just so beautiful and moving. And for me, talking about whether it's a hopeful ending, the music is really hopeful at this point, and it signifies to me transformation, freedom, escape, acceptance. Yeah, and it was just a beautiful cue to write, actually.
I don't know, I can't remember quite where it came from in the mod, but the moment when we went, or we could put the bird in there, and you could see the bird's shadow, and actually it turned from being kind of like a straightforward literal suicide into a metaphorical, or into my mind,
it wasn't actual
kind
suicide.
of like, I always really believed the narrator did turn into a bird just before they hit the ground, and that was really important. I think it's probably the strongest ending in any of our games so far. But yeah, I'm very proud of the way everything came together in that last section.
Yeah, I think it's the bird thing is particularly interesting because I think it was in the original mod, but the timings and everything were just all off, and you never really saw the seagull. Yeah, at least the shadow as well. It was all kind of like a little bit broken. And I remember when we went back in, I made a real effort to try and get that shadow just out of the center of the view, so you kind of have this hint of something happening, and I think you can hear the sound of a seagull flapping its wings. It's like very subtle, but like I say, I kind of really like the way that came together. It kind of it's very like say it's kind of like a release, but at the same time there's still this kind of ambiguity there. That's kind of beautiful.
And I'm really proud that I got the monitor in at the end for an ending of, it goes into the hospital monitor signifying the flat line, and I think it's one of those moments where you never want to be so clever that people notice it and it takes them out of the moment, but it just flows in through the music, and it just feels like everything comes together at that last point. That last VO, Rob's amazing visuals and the music, and it feels like a really, really strong and beautiful ending.
And then in the last second, Nigel Carrington's delivery of just those 2 words have come back, where he just pitch perfect.
Yeah. So that's the end of the director's commentary. We'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone for listening. We hope you've uncovered some secrets and some facts that you didn't know about the game before.
We'd also like to say a huge thank you for buying the game, and for all our fans who've been behind us and been behind the game and have kept it alive all these years. It's a real privilege that it's still out there, still such a title that people love so much.
Yeah, and we're really looking forward to the future and what we can create coming up next. Thanks for listening.
Cheers.
Bye.
Wow, that was something. I mean, thank you for watching the stream. If one of the people who did watch the stream, no one really did, to be honest. But oh well, we might see some people watch the end video. Hope you enjoyed the full gameplay.